Alright, at this point we'll look at the results section of the dissertation. Looking at the 4 goals or expected outcomes that she listed, she determined that goal 1 was met. She started with 47 students. The data for goal 1, however, only includes 34 students because 13 either left the school or didn't schedule the test during the study. And that really brings to question whether or not goal 1 was really met. Who were those 13 students? Why did they drop out? Why didn't they test their, or why didn't they schedule their test during the study? Is it because they were so low performing they knew they wouldn't pass it anyway, so they didn't bother? Did they drop out of school? Were they more gifted students, or comparatively, in this class that just didn't get it scheduled? Where would those students fall? So this high of a mortality rate, 13 out of 47, over 26, almost 30% of your study not being included in the final results really raises a question as to whether or not these results are valid. Now, of those 34 who did finish, 5 out of 10 seniors achieved a passing score, and 21 out of 24 juniors passed. It stated that 23 of them were used as a sample, and 21 out of those 23 passed. This is the first and only time her use of a sample is mentioned in the entire dissertation. The results for the questionnaire at the end did include only 23 results, so I'm assuming that she used that sample for those, but it's really, really unclear what she used that sample for. There's no indication of how that sample was comprised, male, female, race, socioeconomic status, or anything like that. We do get a glimpse of these classes profiles, and that there were 10 seniors and 24 juniors out of these 34 students, but really we have no other indication of anything about the samples. Now, goal 2 was not met. If you recall, goal 2 was for less than 15% failure rate on the post-test, but they actually had a 35% failure rate. And when I say failure, I mean they did not achieve the level that would be required to pass the exit exam. However, they did claim that 91% of the students did improve. All but 2 of these students improved an average of 19 points, and the other 2 were unchanged. Now, she makes a statement here about goals 1 and 2, the achievement of goal 1 and the improvement, at least, in goal 2, that they may be the results of the fact that the students were in a remedial math class, not just because of the constructivist interventions. Here you have a case where it's almost as though 2 interventions are taking place simultaneously, and we really don't know which one actually produced the results. The whole point of this remedial math class the students were in is to improve the test scores. So was it the interventions, or was it the class that was actually producing these results? Now for goal 3 was not met. And I mentioned before that goal 3 was a very ambitious goal, I think, to get students who are currently performing at a 75% rate in 4 months to increase the entire class average by over 10%. Was ambitious. And as I expected, 52% of the students failed to reach that level. So 48% did achieve over 85% grade in the class, which I think is actually pretty good. Now, again, 91% of the students did improve in this area. Only 7 students fell below the 75 or the 70% level in this class, and that was the passing level for the class, was a 70%. So only 7 students were failing the class at the end of this study. And one explanation, she stated that the failure to reach goal 3 could be partially a result of the way the class is presented to the students. All students who failed to achieve a passing grade on the state-mandated math test were required to take the class, but a passing grade in the class was not required for graduation. So it was kind of a required elective. Teachers who were interviewed stated that this may have played a role in the lack of grade progress. When students realized that it really doesn't matter whether or not I pass this class, I'm still going to graduate as long as I finish the exit exam, then effort on things like homework and projects and whatnot can wane, even if they are understanding the material better. The types of errors and responsibility and that kind of thing can impact their grade, even though they may be able to pass the state exam at the end. And then goal four was met, and this I actually have a little bit of an issue with. They claim that students increased in participation, motivation, and performance. Goal 4 was that students would evidence an increase in motivation that will translate into improved achievement. And through the interviews, there was an indication of an observable increase in student participation and motivation as a result of these interventions, but I would really question the increase of achievement. Did that translate into an increase in achievement? Again, goals 2 and 3 were not met. Again, there may be some statistical analysis that may be able to help prove this statement more, but there was none indicated in the dissertation. And one thing that was indicated is that students did not like the computer-assisted instruction and did not indicate any improvement in their opinion of math on the questionnaire. And I actually have a summary of the questionnaire that's contained on page 76 of the dissertation. Here's a little table, and this questionnaire was a 10-item Likert scale, 1 to 5, with 1 being strongly agree and 5 being strongly disagree. And the way she summarized the results is that she used the general agree, a score of 1 or 2, and then ambivalent was the neutral score of 3, and then the disliked was a 4 or 5. And you can see here the students liked working with peers and working in cooperative groups, and they thought that made learning easier. However, their responses to the computer lab, making things easier, making things enjoyable, feeling better about learning, all of those were at best neutral, and there actually was a much stronger, in regards to the computer lab, there was a stronger dislike for it than enjoyment of it. And that kind of translated as well into, would you like to use these strategies in other classes? It really was a very neutral posture the students had regarding these strategies. So I thought that was interesting. So she gives some recommendations. She recommended that they complete the study again with students not enrolled in a remedial math class. This would remove that confounding variable of the class itself being purposed to improve scores. If you have students who are not enrolled in this, then they're just taking a normal math class at the time, and then you're incorporating this, and let's see what happens to the scores then. I think that's a very good recommendation. Another thing was professional development in constructionist methods for selective use in the classroom. And I did appreciate her use of the term selective use. Creating an entire curriculum based on this would be very difficult to implement, and recognizing that selective use would be probably the best strategy, I think, was good. Also, the school should change the class to an elective to improve the attitude of those enrolled in the class. And this is kind of a subset of the broader issue of compulsory education. Should we force students to do things that are in their best interest when they clearly don't want to? And basically allowing students to fail if they're determined to, rather than making them sit in a class and detract attention of the teacher from the students who really want to be there. So I thought that was a very good recommendation as well. Also, teacher in-service training and technology use with the goal of creating collaborative classrooms. As we saw, the students really disliked using the computer lab, and was that in part because the teachers weren't well trained enough in implementing it? We don't know because there wasn't enough detail given, but that's a good question. This recommendation could address that issue. And also earlier exposure of students to constructivist methods. And this is where I think a little bit of her bias comes into play. Obviously, she feels very strongly about the fact that, or the idea that constructivism is a great tool. And I believe that her review of the literature did a good job saying that it could be a good tool. But it's almost as though she's saying, well, this didn't quite work like I expected, but maybe if we started earlier, it would work better. And that's a good question, but I can see a little bit of bias in some of her comments related to this. Now, going into the critique, there's some good things. She followed good ethical practices. She got parent permission. Even though the only component really that I think she would need to get parental permission in was in using the questionnaires, because the rest of it was simply normal grades that would have been collected anyways. She also got permission from the principal to do the study and working with the teachers. I like the fact that she used the heterogeneous pairings for the peer-assisted tutoring, looking at those sub-scores and matching them up, strengths and weaknesses, and also looking every 2 weeks as they change topics and readjusting those pairings, I think was really good. And then the questionnaire has high face validity. Now, this is kind of a pro and a con. The fact that she stated that was good. However, she doesn't state who the individuals were who gave it that assessment. Was this her doctoral review board? Was it the other teachers in the school? In which case, she's the department chair, and there could be some bias there in their responses. So, you know, there's a little bit of question there. But the fact that she at least went through the process of analyzing that was good. Now, there were some cons and some rather major ones, I believe. There's a very poor description of her sample. Like I said, she used the term sample. We really don't know when she's using that, when she's looking at all 34 students or when she's looking at the 23. We have no indication of male, female, race, socioeconomic status, although there is some of that data in the introduction. There really is not much of a description of the sample at all. Like I said, we don't even know how many classes were involved, so we don't know how many different teachers were involved in this. And with those teachers, we have no indication of their experience, how much they've used constructivism themselves in their classrooms before, or how comfortable they are with it or with the technology. I really think she needed to do a much better job of describing these. There's very little detail of her experiment interventions. She talks about doing peer tutoring. She talked about the computer-assisted instruction. However, she never identifies what programs they were using, what types of reports were being run, or anything like that. I really think it's very, very sketchy. And we really don't know. There's no way that we could repeat this experiment on our own because we don't have those details. And I understand this is an applied research studies, so she doesn't really care about generalizability. However,